Imagine the grid fails tonight and stays dark for 3 straight months. What truly breaks your body first? Most people assume it will be an empty stomach. Yet the strange reality is that many homes still hold plenty of cans when their occupants start collapsing. The disaster isn't always a calorie shortage. The real culprit can be dehydration, a complete absence of dietary fiber, missing micronutrients, or the simple fact that your appetite rebels against the same repetitive stockpile. That is the great blind spot in emergency planning. People count containers on a shelf. Almost nobody asks whether those supplies remain functional when the electricity is gone, the stove is cold, clean water is rationed, and your physical strength is already drained. In this video, we are walking through 12 canned provisions that deliver genuine utility during an extended disaster. And the selection sitting in the top spot is an item the world has dismissed for decades. Number 12, tinned potatoes. When the blackout hits, many folks will glance at their pantry and feel a wave of relief. Bags of rice sit untouched. Boxes of pasta sit untouched. Dried legumes sit untouched. Then you attempt to assemble an actual plate of food without a functioning kitchen, without abundant water, and without the mental energy to follow a recipe. Suddenly, owning ingredients is not the same as owning a meal. That precise moment is when tin spuds start proving their worth. Admittedly, they sound unglamorous, right? Nobody marches through a grocery aisle bragging about grabbing a flat of canned potatoes. They lack the visual appeal of pink salmon, the rugged reputation of corned beef, or the tactical mystique of specialty survival rations promoted online. But inside a drawn-out scenario, you stop searching for impressive food and start demanding food that still functions when every modern convenience has failed. Tinned potatoes deliver exactly that. Peel back the lid and you can consume them immediately. No overnight soaking required. No tending a flame. No wasting a pot of precious water simply to transform raw starch into something edible. This convenience matters far more than people anticipate. Eventually, the core challenge is not the volume of stored calories, but whether your exhausted body possesses the stamina to convert those ingredients into sustenance. Potatoes supply steady-release carbohydrates that help stabilize energy, extend satiety, and feel gentler on the system than foods that spike your alertness briefly before dropping you hard. They also contain potassium, an electrolyte critical for muscle function and fluid balance. Especially when meals become erratic, you sweat more, or physical exertion increases unexpectedly. But the hidden superpower of canned potatoes is incredibly mundane. They are tender. That detail sounds minor, but for an elderly relative or anyone drained after several nerve-wracking days, a soft food that requires minimal chewing and digests gently can determine whether a person eats or skips a meal entirely. Tinned potatoes are not a standalone showpiece. They act as a foundation. Eat them straight from the tin, fold them into canned meat, pair them with sardines, blend them with tuna, beans, or ready-made soup. One humble can knit separate items into something that feels like a complete dish. And here is a detail most rookies overlook. When you crack the lid, do not impulsively drain the packing liquid. In a water-scarce environment, that starchy fluid can moisten other dry foods, add needed humidity to a dish, or save you from tapping into limited drinking reserves just to make a meal palatable. The classic blunder is hoarding only dense items that demand heat, water, time, and physical effort to prepare. Before tossing anything into your storage rotation, ask one brutally simple question. If the power vanishes right now, can I consume this food within 30 seconds? Canned potatoes will never make your stockpile look tactical or impressive. But when the burner is dead, water is more valuable than fuel, and your body is starting to weaken. They still do their job silently. They provide usable energy. The next entry tackles a different threat, one that nobody fears on day 1, but that can sabotage nearly every meal by day 3. Number 11, tinned tomatoes. Roughly 72 hours into relying solely on stored provisions, a peculiar problem surfaces. You are not out of supplies. You are simply repulsed by the thought of eating another serving of plain beans, another chunk of identical processed meat, another dry cracker stack. The first day feels manageable. The second day, boredom creeps in. By the third day, mealtime morphs from nourishment into a chore you must force yourself to complete. That is when canned tomatoes transform from a pantry afterthought into a survival asset. Not because they are the most caloric, not because they boast the most muscle-building protein, and definitely not because anyone instinctively labels them emergency food. Canned tomatoes possess one extraordinary advantage. They make you want to keep eating. The natural bright acidity awakens taste buds dulled by repetitive salty, dense, and monotonous rations. Stir a spoonful into canned legumes, potatoes, processed meat, sardines, or chili, and instantly the entire bowl feels fresher, more moist, and far easier to swallow. That might sound trivial, but in a prolonged grid-down reality, it is enormous. A pantry can overflow with energy-rich items, yet if every single option feels dry, overly salty, or heavy in the mouth, you will subconsciously start consuming less. Not because you consciously decide to restrict intake, but because your body quietly rejects monotonous meals. Tomatoes shatter that pattern. Nutritionally, they provide vitamin C, potassium, and lycopene. Interestingly, the lycopene in cooked or preserved tomatoes is often more bioavailable than what you get from raw ones. Put simply, this is not just a flavor enhancer. It is a cheap, shelf-stable method to inject color, moisture, and critical nutrients into a menu that can become dangerously boring very fast. The frequent mistake is accumulating only heavy fillers like meat, beans, rice, and noodles while forgetting one essential question. After 1 week, will you still willingly open those cans? When selecting, stock multiple formats. Diced tomatoes marry well with beans and tinned meat. Crushed tomatoes convert easily into a quick sauce. Tomato paste is intensely concentrated, occupies minimal space, and a single small spoonful can alter the character of an entire pot. If you can find them, lower sodium varieties give you more control over the final taste. Tomatoes are rarely the main event. They are the catalyst that keeps the main dishes viable day after day. The next item on the rundown addresses something even more fundamental than flavor. Because when an outage drags on, the fastest route to physical collapse is frequently not starvation, but dehydration. Number 10. Preserved fruit. If you must endure 90 days without electricity, the question isn't solely about having enough food. The question is whether your system receives enough moisture across those weeks to keep operating. This is the oversight countless preppers make when building their stash. They gather tinned meats, fish, beans, nut butters, and dry biscuits. All of these have merit, but many are dry, salty, or dense by nature. If you consume them back to back while your water supply is being strictly rationed, your body will begin to fatigue far faster than you anticipate. That is why preserved fruit should never be dismissed as a mere sugary dessert. Inside a fruit container, the treasure is not just the fruit solids, it is the surrounding liquid. In ordinary life, people often eat the fruit and casually dump the juice. But when you are living in a no-power situation without a fridge and no certainty about when safe running water returns, that liquid ceases to be a side detail. Do not discard fluid that could help keep you functional for a few additional hours. It does not replace clean drinking water, but it functions as a supplementary hydration source. You can tap instantly with zero filtering, zero boiling, and zero preparation. Packaged alongside that fluid is a modest amount of natural sugar that can deliver fast energy when you start feeling sluggish, brain-fogged, or physically slow. The value of tinned fruit rests on 3 legs: moisture, quick access energy, and psychological comfort. After many days of eating only salty, dry, heavy, and unchanging foods, a slice of preserved peach, pear, pineapple, or apple can make a meal feel less like a grim survival duty. It restores a fragment of normalcy, and in a 90-day ordeal, that sensation of normalcy is sometimes precisely what keeps you eating regularly. Your selection method is critical here. Prioritize fruit packed in water or its own natural juice. These versions tend to be more balanced and more versatile. Fruit packed in thick syrup might taste indulgent initially, but the heavy sugar load can amplify thirst if you lack sufficient drinking water to compensate. You can eat it directly, portion it in small servings across the day, or combine it with oats, crackers, and a bit of nut butter to craft a soft, easily digested snack, carrying both immediate and longer-lasting energy. The biggest blunder is treating fruit preserves as an insignificant after-dinner treat. During normal times, it is just something sweet. But when water is scarce, it may become the liquid you deeply regret pouring down the drain. The next item on the list solves yet another problem, the moment when you are so depleted that even deciding what to eat feels like a weight. Number 9. Ready-to-eat canned soup. After 2 weeks of no power, the problem isn't what you stored. It's whether you still have the energy to cook it. I've spent months planning grid failure scenarios, and everyone misses this part. Ready-to-eat soup isn't nutritionally perfect, but when you're too stressed and tired to think, it's the meal that prevents skipping meals entirely. Just make sure it's not condensed. That mistake costs you precious water you can't spare. When the gap between needing one more step and needing 0 steps becomes the difference between eating and not eating, simplicity wins. The worst misstep is viewing fiber as a secondary concern. In reality, when surviving on stored food for weeks, digestion climbs the priority ladder rapidly. Beans are not the most exciting item in your pantry, but after many days of shelf-stable eating, you will discover that your body values them far more than your taste buds ever did. The next entry is completely different. It won't keep you full as long as beans, but at the precise moment when body and mind begin crashing, a tiny amount can pull you back faster than you think. Number 7. Honey. Honey is widely misunderstood as just a sweetener, but in a 90-day grid-down scenario, honey is not a treat. It is emergency rocket fuel. Humans have treasured honey for thousands of years for good reason. Archaeologists have uncovered pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs. The Smithsonian has noted that honey can remain preserved for millennia because of its low moisture content, high acidity, and natural environment hostile to bacterial growth. That doesn't mean you should view honey as a meal replacement. That would be a serious error. Honey won't sustain you all day, but it can yank you through the moment your body wants to quit. Picture the scene after many powerless days. Deep sleep is a memory. Eating is irregular. Your body is still running, but everything begins to slow. You stand and feel gravity pulling harder. Simple cognitive tasks take longer, and even a minor chore like reorganizing water bottles or checking a flashlight makes you want to collapse. That is when a single spoonful of honey demonstrates its value. The vast majority of honey's composition is natural sugar, primarily glucose and fructose. The body can utilize these sugars fairly quickly to generate immediate energy. Not the long-lasting fullness of beans, not the solid stomach feel of potatoes, not the protein punch of tuna or meat. Honey delivers a short, sharp push. And in a crisis, sometimes you do not need a large meal instantly. You just need to be alert enough to keep moving a little farther. Take one small spoonful when you begin losing steam. Stir it into oats, spread it on crackers, drizzle it over preserved fruit, or mix it with a splash of water if you need something easier to drink. But do not treat it like candy. Overdoing it can spike energy fast, followed by a crash, particularly if there is no substantial food behind it. A common mistake is discovering crystallized honey and assuming it has spoiled. In truth, crystallization is a natural physical change. If the honey is kept pure, sealed, and free from moisture contamination, it remains perfectly usable. The smartest way to store it is in multiple small jars, tightly sealed, kept in a dry location, away from moisture, and never touching a wet spoon to the interior. One giant jar might seem economical, but during prolonged use, several smaller containers give you better portion control and reduce the risk of ruining the entire reserve. Honey is not a nutritional foundation. It is a tactical tool for the right moment when the body starts dipping. When mental processing slows, when you need a little more force to finish the essential task in front of you. One small spoonful can be worth far more than a fleeting feeling of fullness. The next item shifts gears from rapid energy to something else, keeping the brain sharp enough to make correct decisions when the world around you is descending into disorder. Number 6. Tinned tuna. In a 90-day crisis, muscle preservation is essential, but the brain demands equal attention. At some stage, you don't just need physical power to move water jugs, operate tools, or navigate in darkness. You also need a mind clear enough to decide which water container to open first, which battery to conserve, which meal should be divided into smaller portions, and which family member needs immediate attention. During an emergency, a clear mind can be worth more than a full stomach. That is precisely why canned tuna makes this list. Many people see tuna merely as a convenient protein source. That is accurate, but incomplete. Tuna helps the body retain muscle, maintain strength, and avoid rapid deterioration when meals become incomplete. The more notable advantage is that tuna also delivers omega-3 fatty acids, a group of healthy fats frequently discussed in relation to brain and cardiovascular health. One can of tuna doesn't instantly grant you perfect clarity, but during stressful days, broken sleep, erratic eating, and constant small decisions, it is a shelf-stable, easy to open, and easy to eat food that supports both physical structure and mental function. You can eat tuna with crackers, mix it with canned potatoes, add tomatoes to cut the dryness, or combine it with beans to make the meal stick to your ribs. If you have tortillas or long life bread, tuna becomes an exceptionally convenient filling. The pitfall to dodge is turning tuna into your exclusive protein source. A single jar of peanut butter can hold over 2,500 calories in less space than a tin of beans. I've spent years studying long-term food storage, and most people completely overlook calorie density when planning for emergencies. When power's gone for 90 days, you can't cook every meal. Peanut butter stretches your rations without needing fuel, water, or effort. But eat too much at once, and you'll regret it when water gets scarce. Small portions combined with moisture-rich foods, that's how you make it last without making yourself miserable. In a 90-day disaster, the core issue is not just whether you have enough individual ingredients. The issue is how many items you have that can be opened and immediately register as a full, satisfying meal. A standard can of chili can deliver roughly 350 to over 600 calories depending on the recipe. But the actual value transcends the calorie count. Inside that single can you typically get protein from meat, carbohydrates from beans, fats, and a depth of seasoning and richness that many other stored foods completely lack. It does not feel like a component waiting to be assembled. It feels like a finished dish that has already been cooked for you. The classic mistake is storing too many disjointed components. Beans in one can meat in another, crackers separate, noodles separate. The inventory looks abundant, but when you are fatigued, sleep-deprived, low on water, and unwilling to think further, you suddenly realize you own more raw materials than actual meals. Chili bridges that gap. You can eat it directly from the can. Mix it with tinned potatoes. Add extra beans to stretch it. Stir in tomatoes to lighten the heaviness, or scoop it with crackers. When selecting, prioritize versions with both meat and beans. A pull-tab lid if available, and check the sodium level if you plan to eat it multiple days consecutively. Chili does not rank high because it is nutritionally flawless. It ranks high because it solves two problems: simultaneously real nutrition and the psychological sensation of eating a proper meal. During 90 days without power, that feeling alone can keep you eating when other foods start feeling like disconnected puzzle pieces. Number 2. Tinned meat. Protein becomes completely useless if your body lacks the ability to chew and swallow it. This is the harsh truth many survival guides gloss over. People stare at nutrition labels and ask how many grams of protein does this item contain. But in a 90-day power outage, the sharper question is, when I'm at my lowest physical point, can I still physically manage to eat this? One tin can provide about 20 to 40 grams of protein depending on the variety, along with fat and energy that directly support muscle maintenance. But its genuine advantage lies in its soft texture and instant usability. Compared to tough, dried jerky or leathery preserved strips, tinned meat is far easier to chew, far simpler to swallow, and generally does not demand excessive extra water just to force it down. This is extraordinarily important for older adults, those with dental issues, people suffering extreme exhaustion, or anyone who has weathered several consecutive high-stress days. A protein-rich food that is too tough, too dry, or too difficult to consume will quickly become an untouched relic on the shelf. Canned meat can be eaten straight, mixed with potatoes, added to soup, paired with beans, tomatoes, or crackers. It is not just a main protein, it is an item that elevates the value of numerous other storage foods. When buying, select meat that is tender, easy to open, and most critically already familiar to your household. A crisis is not the moment to experiment with a tin that sounds impressive on paper, but nobody can stomach swallowing. A truly well-prepared individual does not just ask, does this food contain protein? They ask, when I'm completely drained, can I still manage to eat it? That is why canned meat sits firmly at number 2, nearly indispensable. Number 1, tinned sardines. One of the coldest truths about survival nutrition is that real value and perceived value rarely align. The most aggressively marketed options are not automatically the most useful. The priciest selections are not automatically the most worth stockpiling. And occasionally, the item sitting at the peak of the list is something countless shoppers walk straight past in the supermarket without a second glance. That item is tinned sardines. A single can of sardines, around 3.75 ounces, can provide more than 20 grams of protein alongside omega-3 fats, vitamin D, calcium, and healthy lipids. That nutritional density is impressive standing alone. But what vaults sardines into the number 1 slot is not just a single nutrient. It is the way all those benefits arrive packaged together in one small palm-sized tin. Tuna supplies you with protein. Salmon brings vitamin D and calcium to the table. But sardines carry nearly all of those advantages simultaneously within the same food. Sardines do not win because they are fancy. They win because they waste almost nothing. The flesh delivers the protein. The natural fats help increase calorie density. The soft, edible bones supply calcium, and vitamin D assists the body in utilizing that calcium more effectively. Even the oil inside the can holds tangible value when you need extra energy to pour over potatoes, beans, or crackers. That is also why the biggest blunder is cracking the tin and then flicking out the soft bones or pouring the oil down the drain. In many instances, you are literally discarding the most valuable elements. Eat them directly. Eat them with crackers. Mash them with potatoes, tomatoes, or tinned beans. They require zero cooking. They require zero complex preparation. They demand almost no extra water. When choosing, the type packed in oil typically provides more energy density. The type packed in water is easier to blend with other ingredients. But the most important selection criterion remains the kind your family can actually tolerate and will willingly eat on rotation. No single entry on this list is a flawless miracle food. Each item solves a distinct problem: sustained energy, hydration, digestive function, muscle preservation, brain support, or the emotional feeling of eating a real meal. The goal is not hoarding as much as possible. The goal is curating foods that remain genuinely useful when there is no power, no stove, and when the human body is no longer operating at full strength. Preparation is not panic. Preparation is the act of reducing difficult decisions when life itself becomes more difficult. Now, I want to ask you directly, out of these 12 foods, which one is a permanent resident in your pantry? And which one shocked you the most by appearing on this list? Share your personal experience in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown valuable, please like this video to help my channel reach more people who are building a smarter, more resilient pantry.